welcome back to another edition of Life's Journeys. I'm Dr. Ralph Smith. You know, one of the things that's exciting about this program, and it's one of many things, is the fact that we can explore other people's lives, find out the challenges that they've actually had to go through, and then maybe give them a little advice toward the end. And that's what makes this show so special. But what makes it even more special than that is the fact that you're watching it, and hopefully you'll see a little bit of your life in these programs, and it'll give you some answers so that you can have a good life, and perhaps even a better life. Well, what we're going to do in this show is very difficult, and I want to caution our listeners that we need to really have this show for mature audiences. So if you have young family members around, or you have impressionable young kids, this might not be a show we want them to watch because it might raise more questions than answers. But for everybody else, and I hope that includes you, this show is very special because we're going to go and explore a life of Juliette, who had a tough upbringing as a child and dealing with a lot of challenges between illnesses involving her mother, drinking issues with family members, the whole works. And yet somehow she was able to work her way through all of these challenges. Now, what I'd like you to do as we move into that segment is picture yourself in Juliette's position, and then ask yourself, if you're not in that position already, ask yourself, what would I do? And hopefully in the conclusion of this segment, we'll be able to give you some answers. We'll be right back with Juliette as we discuss dependency and how families need to intervene so that the outcome is a positive one. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our segment called Life's Journey, and now we're looking at families and how they deal with substance abuse. Julia, thank you for coming in.
Hi, thanks.
You know, one of the battles we all have in life is dealing with our own challenges, trying to attain our life goals, deal with challenges that come up, dealing with our finances, the whole works. And then there's the one that is the most difficult, and that's dealing with family members who have some type of challenge that you need help with. And although there have been many shows made, and very popular shows about interventions, you've got Dr. Phil, you've got a lot of these different shows, it's not quite as easy as it seems when you're actually in this situation. So we want to thank you first of all for willing to share with us this. But I hear that you've been involved in having to get involved with a family member who has some challenges, and I'd like you to share with our audience a little bit about how it happened, why it happened, and then why the family members had to intervene.
Which family member do you want
Any
to talk
family member you want to talk about. Well, we don't want to mention names now because our lawyer is already busy enough, so we don't want to mention names.
So in my family, it's kind of a, what year is it, what problem is it? I don't know. I feel like a cliche, you know, I'm the daughter of issues, basically. My father was a big user. He drank a lot. He would make a drink to go to the store to buy more alcohol.
Wow.
So he would have something with him. His number one saying was, as long as you've never seen me do it, you can't testify to having seen me do it.
Wow.
So
Talking about being defensive.
Right. The top drawer in his desk was usually locked, depending on who was over or what he had going on. And so that takes its toll on everybody. My mom had to work extra hard, and my brother grew up to be a little my father, and it's causes some pretty big rifts, you know.
Did your father ever admit to himself or to family members that he had a problem, or he acted that's a daily routine, like getting a cup of coffee before you go to work?
Yeah, no, there was no going to work, but it definitely was a daily routine. And there was a couple times that we, you know, sat down with him throughout my life. You know, I can remember being a teenager and trying to talk to my dad about things, and then of course he would, it's not me, it's you.
Sure.
You know, so.
That's what they refer to as transference. And whenever you confront someone with a challenge or an issue they want to discuss, their transference is to move that ball down the field a little further.
Right, I call it shifting the spotlight.
Exactly
It gets too hot, and all of a sudden it's like, well, why are you even here?
Right.
Why are we even talking about this? What are you even doing here? So that's fun.
It begs the obvious question, and most of the patients that I've taken care of in all the years that I've been practicing, they like to refer to it conveniently self-medicating.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of interesting how they refer to that as self-medicating, since
Right.
obviously there's no prescription involved, no doctor guidance. I guess you just play your own doctor. It's a lot
Right.
cheaper that way. But one of the things that you have to ask yourself when you look at your dad's situation is the genetics, and we've talked in previous programs about that. Does he realize he's an alcoholic? Is there a genetic link to that? Or is that just something he defers to whenever he would feel like he was under pressure, for example?
I think it was an ultimate safety net, almost. His life plans kind of took a hard right, and so he just was caught by the net, you know. He woke up in the morning and he would shake. I don't know what's wrong with me. And I smile when I laugh about it, and when I talk about it, because, you know, personally it's so ridiculous on the outside looking in. Well, yeah, of course you're shaking. You're detoxing, you know, you
Right.
fix your drink, it's your breakfast, you'll feel so much better. So it's almost a defensive mechanism to be cynical about the situation, because if it's his own contained evil, then it's like it can't really affect me. What indirectly doesn't affect me shouldn't directly affect me. Even though that's my family, it's still at arm's length.
Well, and we're just going to just kind of give this a brief overview of his condition. Obviously, I haven't seen him. I haven't had any type of analysis done. But if he's having the shakes when he wakes up in the morning, and he finds the urges for it to carry on his basic life, then indeed he's an alcoholic.
Right.
And in being an alcoholic, there's a lot of controversy about that, but it's a disease. And although it's not treated as such would be with cancer or heart disease or some other diseases that we face, it's a disease. Mm-hmm. So of course that does beg the question then, did he ever seek any help, or was he just constantly in denial?
Right. The help didn't come from my father. I don't think it ever will come for him. My brother has been involved in health programs. He did the Salvation Army rehabilitation program, where it's almost locked down,
Right.
but you're free to like work, and that was really good. Of that came the Serenity Prayer and his 1-year chip, and what is that, the phrase that they use? One drink isn't enough, but one drink is too many and 100 isn't enough.
Yes.
Right?
That's another excuse. That's
Right.
basically what it is.
Right.
But he achieved a 1-year chip even though they knew that he had been drinking and all that, or did
My
he hide
brother
it very well?
stopped drinking.
Did your brother stop drinking? But he really was able to hide it?
He totally stopped
Okay,
drinking.
good.
He just substituted other things.
Okay.
So he was clean of alcohol, but he weighed less than I did.
Wow.
You know?
So he just changed his dependency to something else.
Right.
Because those 1-year chips are hard to earn.
They are.
I mean,
And
the
that's-
scrutiny they're under,
I mean-
that's an amazing accomplishment, especially if you have the genetics that are tied behind it.
Predisposed, and yeah, absolutely, and that's no lie, that's an amazing feat. However, if it's just traded in for another evil, how is that like something to celebrate, you know?
No, it's nothing to celebrate, except for, at least in your brother's case, he was admitting that he had a problem, and going through that process. At first it's a little bit embarrassing, but then after that you start settling in. I'm not a huge proponent of AA, or NA for that matter. I am, in a position that is watching people develop through it. It's better than nothing. And a lot of time family members mean well, but if they don't have the proper tools, it's very hard to do any type of intervention that's successful, because they don't look at you as a person that is a professional trying to help them. They look at you as them, basically you telling them what to do.
Right.
And in the case of an authority figure like a father, that's extremely difficult. So, but let's finish with your father, and then we'll move on to your brother on that. In your father's life, and having to drink that much and having the shakes, which basically means if he wasn't consuming when he was asleep, which is pretty obvious unless he was taking an IV.
Right.
But he wakes up with that type of shakes. That means, his dependency was huge.
Yes.
So how did that affect his life? How did it affect his life of being a good husband, being a provider, being a father, being a member of the community? I mean, all these vital roles that technically, and I'm not being sexist about it, but technically he should be filling in and doing that. What did he do? Did he just exist?
Yeah, he barely existed, actually. He had his own room because I think my dad gave up on life around 1993. He had been, the hero, a firefighter, a great influence, all of the major father figure ideas, and then something happened and he went to jail and he lost the job and the house and the pension, and we moved, and my mom stayed with him. She's a very strong, stand by her man, situation type of woman. So after that, it just became like a string of messing up and going back to jail. And years later, he would become the guy on the couch. We sent him to his own room because he drank so much. He had a scent,
No, when you're an alcoholic, you basically secrete alcohol through your pores when you're that. And a lot of alcoholics, they'll try to use mouthwash, they'll try to use men's cologne, maybe women's cologne based on their point of view.
He tried
but the
to
point
smoke
is,
cigars.
Well, yeah, they do everything.
Like,
and when I say women's cologne, I don't mean that to be facetious, but they do everything they can to cover the perceived odor. But what they don't understand is the odor is not coming from their mouth like you use mouthwash for. It's actually coming through all their pores, because the body can only absorb so much alcohol and then start secreting it. And it's the same thing with pot smokers. You can tell no matter how many times they wash their clothes when a pot smoker comes, or for somebody that does something illegal, like for example smoking cigarettes. They carry the scent of cigarettes wherever they go. So there's certain telltale signs. Now that of course raises the question that if he was not able to work, and I assume he went to jail because of DUIs, is that why he went to jail, or what caused?
Depending on, it's kind of name the situation. He went to jail for a DUI. No, maybe not. He was the type to walk down the street with a loaded weapon, or
Yeah, I understand.
Run over the guy who owed him money, or with his vehicle.
Well, if he's drunk or operating with that, he's not working with a quote waking mind, as we call it in the industry.
Right. So that was my father growing up.
Did your mother or any family member suggest, and I mean just suggest, I don't want to get too deep into your story, but just suggest that maybe he should get a medical exam, that maybe there's an outlying pain issue, that maybe he hurt his back, or maybe he had severe headaches? A lot of times when you have medically induced issues that require pain control, instead of investing in the proper medications, people think they can find it in the bottle that is cheaper.
Right.
Was there any issue like that at all?
Not that I remember. No, he was pretty well taken care of. My mom worked full-time jobs to support the whole family. He had spectacles that he lost, and he had, his teeth that he didn't wear, and he had everything you could want in his own bedroom to boot.
Wow. But the question that is the key question here, the hero. Is your mom a hero because she did this, or do you think she was an enabler in putting up with this?
My mom was a martyr. She died trying to support everyone. She was so in over her head. My dad was the guy on the couch, so he did nothing. He thought it was okay to walk to the store barefooted type thing. My older sister has Down syndrome, so she's pretty well dependent on everyone. As well as she does on her own. She does, brush her own teeth when prompted, and
that's tough.
My brother was in and out of jail, had just gone to rehab, had just bounced back to mom and dad's house, and so by the time anyone knew mom was sick, she was, juggling so many plates that it was too late.
It wore her down.
So yeah, she died trying.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
We focus in this segment and talking about how families deal with this, and one obvious area again is the area of intervention. And in order to have a successful intervention, normally you'll get a professional person who will kind of moderate it. You get family members to come in and share with them how much they love that particular person and how they're willing to help. Any type of episodes like that was tried with your father?
I tried to ask him. I came to visit when I was probably 25. I visited him and my mom. I was living out of state. And I sat down with my dad, and he was, shaking, drinking, smoking. Dad, what are you doing? What is this quality of life? How have you ended up sitting here on the couch day after day? What are you doing with your life? And he got so defensive. That's when he blew up. Well, what are you doing back? Well, who invited you to come visit? Why are you in my house?
I'm surprised that he used the line, "Hey, little lady, I'm your father." and all that
he,
type, because normally that's how they default.
he did. He stood up to me and he said, blah, 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 my house. And I told him, like, dude, I'm grown up now. You're not going to put hands on me. Don't. You're an old man now. Don't step to me. You know, and so we ended up actually in a fist fight. And that was one of the last times that I saw my father.
In your heart, and that's what we're talking about, and then we'll move to your brother here in a second. But in your heart, can you forgive him, realizing that he has a disease? Or do you still hold kind of a spot in your heart that says, why didn't he care enough to help? Why didn't he care enough to step up to a traditional role? Where exactly is your psyche involving your father?
My dad died a long time ago.
Yeah.
When I was 19, we found out he had hepatitis. So I got the idea years ago that he was gone. He's asked me, do I look yellow? You know, all these telltale signs that he was 1 foot in the grave. My father's dead. The only way for me to find him is to find out if he's currently in jail.
Mm-hmm.
So, from time to time, curiosity gets the best of me. And I do. I'll get out the iPad and try and see where my dad is. But yeah, he's not on my mind.
Well, what you're looking for, this is not meant to be a session to help you necessarily, but just share with our audience, you need closure. And you need to probably go move forward in your new life, because obviously you know the kind of life you want to have.
Right.
You know the kind of life you want to lead. And when children enter the picture, you obviously will know through no greater lesson than you could ever learn in any book of how important it is to be a good role model.
I know exactly what I don't want in life. And I had the opportunity to tell my mom that not only did I learn from what they did, but I learned from what they couldn't do.
Right.
And because of that, I'm a stronger person. The holidays are a little less family filled, but I think they're fulfilled. Ultimately, after searching through all the wreckage of life, you're trying to figure out how to stand on your own and who that person is. So that, I think, is the point that I'm at now.
Well, we have a saying at Jenny Marie, and it's the last book I'm writing. I've written 3 books, and this is my last one, because I'm getting too old myself writing these books that it requires a lot of work. And my executive producer works me so hard I don't have time to write hardly. So if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But it's called Don't Live Life in the Rearview Mirror. And to me, this being my final book, the reason I'm writing it kind of encompasses the entire 28, 30 years of working with people and finding that a lot of people have problems with that issue. Is they try to live life and they're always looking in the rearview mirror. Now, if we drove our cars and we did that, we wouldn't have to drive cars anymore because we'd have our license gone.
Right.
But I find it's valuable, and hopefully you would take this as just as a piece of advice, that if you take the theory of don't live life in the rearview mirror, realizing a couple basic facts. Number 1, you cannot relive yesterday.
Right.
It is gone. And whatever part of today we have available at the time of this filming, you can basically control that somewhat. But you've already got up and spent a few hours this morning being up and at it. But tomorrow is like a new oyster. You have the total control.
Right.
I use the same example about living life in the rearview mirror. If you learn from those mistakes, either mistakes that you've made or you've seen others make, and that makes you a stronger person, and maybe gives you a more well-defined field of what's right and what's wrong, because we all have to make those choices, then indeed you do that. And you move on. And you put all your efforts and hearts and dreams and everything that you have inside your soul to move forward and to look forward to what tomorrow will be. And being young as you are, you have a bright future ahead of yourself. And you got to do those things, because if you constantly look back, you're going to have a problem, because you can't deal with today. Now, in dealing with your brother, how did he come about all these issues?
He is my dad incarnate.
Oh boy.
I blame my dad for who my brother ended up being. They bonded over substances because, well, if you're doing it with me, then you can't tell on me.
Right.
So my brother, as a teen, was participating in things far beyond his years. Unfortunately, you can see it on him.
Do you resent him for that, for doing that?
And that's hard to answer, because I can remember when my brother was my best friend.
Mm-hmm.
It's just very sad.
Because if you do, realize that, well, who was his role model?
Right.
You know, men tend to find the role model of their father and work in his same images. You can see it throughout people's lives. If their fathers were law enforcement officers or firemen or whatever, they tend to follow in the same career path. And you know why they do that? They do that because they want to impress their father. And as crazy as it sounds, and I'm sure this is probably the case with your brother, especially in those formative teenage years, he probably wanted to do one-upsmanship.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's amazing how people will do that. And if that's all he knows, and I don't know what influence he had with his friends, if he had friends that drank and did all those things, but those things are all reinforcing behavior. And all of a sudden they wake up and they get into their 20s and they start thinking about their friends down the road who cleaned themselves up and went on to school or built a career, found a beautiful woman, decided to marry that beautiful woman, have children, then start planning for their success. And then before you know it, you wake up and you got gray hair, you might be missing a few teeth, and you say, boy, where did the time go? And then you got those grandkids, or what I refer to as the rugrats, clawing at you. Come on, Papa, come on, Papa.
Right.
The cycle of life never ends until you finally leave. So out of those experiences, very personal experiences, realizing what your mom could have or maybe shouldn't have done or could have done, all those things behind, and again, we're going to put those in the rearview mirror.
Right.
Because the street light's ahead of us now.
Right.
It's not behind us. The one behind us,
Those are
we're
already
through it,
done.
babe. We're done.
Yeah.
But looking at it, how does it change your life? What do you do as a young woman ready to engage that new life of building a family and building your career and being able to do all the things so you can look forward to having grandkids like the good doctor? What has that done? How's that helped you?
It took a little while to wake up, after the smoke settled.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, who do I want to be?
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to follow in the example? No, not really. So it makes me more selfish, unfortunately.
Well, wait a minute. Not selfish. Do you tend to be more self-protective?
Yeah.
Do you have a little less trust? Maybe the trust has to be earned?
Shorter fuse with people.
I'm trying to be real polite
Yeah.
here. Because, see, that still shows another example, and it's not about you in this section. But that means you got to bring closure to it.
Right.
Because you know what? You didn't have any choice of any of those things. They're just like watching a movie and watching every part of that movie flashing by. And you're always wondering, if you think like I do, what's going to happen at the end of the movie. And it's all building to the same situation. And all of a sudden you're at the end of the movie, and boom, everything happens in 5 minutes. Your life's somewhat the same way. You can't control how your mom reacted.
It is what it is, though.
But there's nothing you can do to change about it.
Right.
Except you realize that if that's bad, and obviously you had to experience it, it is, then you don't want to repeat that mistake by having a partner that's going to resemble those type of behaviors. Because that's something you do have a choice over. Final question on this type of situation. There was no professional intervention because we're doing one-on-one. You're always going to be the kid. It doesn't matter.
Right.
And again, I'm talking about your dad in various stages, diseases, whole works. You can't change any of that. That's done. And if you go to your father and try to help, even though you might have the best intentions, you're still going to be that little girl. You can grow up and be a big girl and have 6 kids. It doesn't matter. When he
Right.
looks in your eyes, and I can tell you I've got 2 girls of my own, I still see the little girl, even though they're all grown up. So with that all in mind, what would you have done if you could have total control? Let's say the good Lord gave you a magic baton that you could just touch your mom's shoulder and have her do exactly what you wanted. What would you have had her do differently? And how would she have done it?
That's a whole can of worms that I never wanted to open. There's so many what ifs, there's so many points that something could have gone differently, but it didn't. And trying to reimagine how life could be is so painful.
Then let me help you with this, and then we'll bring this session to a close. I'm going much deeper than I planned. I've dealt with a lot of people in my lifetime. A lot of people with problems, a lot of people with no problems, a lot of people I just interface with in the different things that I do. That has nothing to do with being a doctor. And I have seen very few examples of people like your mom, and I'll tell you why. And this is from my heart to you. Most women wouldn't put up with that crap. They could have grabbed you, thrown you in the car, said, we're out of here, and you could have had a life of all these different homes, different guys coming in and out of your life, because that's the easy way out, okay? A lot of women would have fallen backwards and say, okay, I'm going to stick with this bum because he's the father of my children. But you know what? If he can lay on that couch, I can too. And just go ahead and get all the support programs that society has to offer and then be raised in that kind of, life.
Right.
You could have had a mom who could have taken off and disappeared. Because in this world today, it's not like the 1950s when women stood by their men. And of course, there's a lot of nice country songs that tie to that. And they just take off. They say, you know what? I don't need this. And they abandon everything. And can you imagine if she had done that, which a lot of women I work with do, then you would have been left there handling that mess. And you would have to ask yourself, did you really buy into this? Because most people take the attitude, unless there's some secret I haven't been made aware of in my life, we never asked to be born.
Right.
We're born.
Right.
And we deal with the situations we have, we pick up life skills, and then we always hope to do things better.
You do what you can.
That's right. So if it brings closure to you, and this is something that I think you really should think about, is that you took every step you could yourself to help, even as a grown woman, when you could say, hey, I'm an adult, I can move on in my own life, I'm doing my own career, why should I worry about that? But you came back. And the reason why you came back is you still care. And by the way, you still do. You
Of course.
But you realize that there's only so many things you can control. And on your mom's piece of work, as far as I'm thinking, her piece of work of life, I would admire that.
Absolutely.
Because there's no doubt that if she could just change him or threaten him or say, boy, if you don't do this, I'm kicking your butt out of the house.
Oh, I'm sure she
all
did
these different
too.
things.
She was
but
a
the
firecracker.
fact that she sat there and fought to the very end. And I want to close on this. And you know why she did that? She did it for you, your brother, because she knew that she had a greater job than your sister.
Yep.
Those kids are her legacy that keeps going on. So by creating any situation that would have upset that apple cart,
Yep.
it would have created more hardship on you guys. And yes, you had to witness it. And yes, you had to tolerate it. And you had to go to bed some nights full of tears.
Oh, man.
But maybe it made you tougher too. But the fact is, she didn't run away.
Right.
And that is an incredible accomplishment. It really is.
She was an incredible woman.
And it sure sounds like it. Sounds like you're well on your way too. All right, we'll go ahead and end the segment with that. But the main thing that we're trying to take part of these stories and dealing with very, very personal issues is that these give you examples of what you can do, perhaps things you shouldn't do, but the most important thing is seek the professional help. Take that pressure off you, and I know everything costs money in the world, but get some professional help so that you are a player in the game, of supportive player, rather than trying to direct the efforts. Because when you have delicate family relationships, they're very complex. That requires the help of a professional. Let's go ahead and take a break. Welcome back to the program. In life's journeys, we deal with a lot of journeys throughout life that are pleasant, some that are very unhappy and sad and have horrible endings. And then it's just the typical day where you just try to make it through the day. And I want to thank Juliette for talking to us, and we can discuss this a little bit more in detail about perhaps some of the worst days of your life, but again, as far as moving ahead in life, perhaps some of the better days of your life, because you learned such a valuable lesson. As you went through these experiences with what your mom's role was, what your brother's role was, and obviously your sister had her challenges too, and all these things hit you, you probably had a choice of either getting absorbed in that mess, breaking free of the mess, or perhaps searching out and building your own new life. So I know that you went and picked your new life, which is, by the way, the right decision to make. But when you found your special guy, you sooner or later had to address that issue of your background and how it impacted you, and perhaps giving him a little taste of what it's like. How did you handle that?
Well, I did run away at first. When it came to my family, I was up and gone as soon as 18 hit and right before. So it took a little of the running away to really figure out which direction my life should go. So when it finally came time and I finally was in the situation where I found where I want to be, what I want to do, where I want to go, who I want to be with, who I want to be, we planned a trip back home. my other half, my better half, and I. And we saw all the important people, his parents, his dad, people who I consider my family, close friends, and my aunt and other people. And we had the opportunity to spend a couple nights in our hometown. So during that time, I said, I want to go back. I want to see my parents' house. I want to see the last house my dad was in. So I knew it was foreclosed on. I knew that after my mom got sick, she went to my brother's apartment. He had his place for them. Thank God too, because going back to that house, as sick as she was, wouldn't have done anything for her peace of mind, for her health. It was condemned. We showed up, so we drove out and we showed up at the house, and the yard is overgrown and the fence has been knocked down. And it just looks, you know when a house gets to the age where it's like slumped over? It just looked slumped over. So we walked up and the back door is kicked in. And by this time, the glass door had been a sliding glass door. It had already been replaced over the years of fighting my brother, my dad. Now it's plywood, stuck in the rollers. But so that's kicked in. And you can tell that vagrants had been living there. All of the memories that we had in the attic were like ground into the carpet. Boxes, years. My sister's homework, pictures that had been water rot, the ceiling was caved in. It was like all the sickness that my dad had seeping out of, just permeated his room. The whole ceiling was hanging down, like windows were broken. People had gone through and pulled out all the appliances for copper, but the sink, the faucet that I put in for them was still there. So I dug through and, we were trying to run in and run out, basically, because the smell was so bad. We had our shirts up over our faces, taking deep breaths to try and hold it. And as the years of memories are just everywhere, you can see wall to wall, grown in with mold and animal droppings. And it was like the pictures of tornado scenes that you see where people are standing in what's left of their home. And you look around and you try and take it all in, and it's not where it should be. Things aren't what they should be. And there's a notice from the city saying that you shouldn't be in the house, and it was crazy. It was so something else, there was so many rooms I wanted to go through, or like the garage I wanted to get to, but the lawn was all overgrown and people had just gone through and thrown things out in the lawn that they couldn't sell or take, or it was a scene right out of a movie. So I did what I could, and I found pictures of my older sister and Halloween costumes, and preserved what I could, cut out the water damage. And so I had a couple keepsakes from it. But ultimately, when I walked out of the house and took the shirt off of my face, I got a great big hug. And it was so apparent that you can't go home. You have to make your home. You have to turn around now from what it was and just go forward. So that almost made it easier, seeing the wreckage. Like if it had been whole, you would want to still be a part of it, but it's destroyed. It's all gone. It's all gone. So all there is left is to build.
It's all gone except in your memory. What you're seeing, Juliette, is the death of a home and the death of all the bad memories that's in a home. It's kind of ironic when you talk about tornadoes or things like that, because I was born and raised in West Texas in Amarillo, and that's Tornado Alley.
So
And I'll tell you, I've seen people who have had their homes blown away. But they take the attitude that if they had good memories there, and they want to recreate those memories, it's just a house. It can be built. I've seen cases where they used to have huge hailstorms in Amarillo, and we've had a case where an older woman that lived down the road from us, a hailstorm went through the wood roof and hit her in a rocking chair and killed her. It was the size of a volleyball or whatever. And you look at those things and you say, okay, the house is a symbol that within those four walls, in a figurative sense, all those things happen. There might have been some good memories, bad memories. But the reality in your mind is you need to accept, for your way to achieve closure, that home is dead. It has died.
It is.
And the vultures who come in afterwards just to get shelter from the rain,
Yeah.
or whatever reasons, that's really a side issue at this point. Because when the family left, for whatever means they left or reasons, that home became a house. And the house is only a material thing. And I can tell you that in some cases where in spousal abuse, which is not our subject today, but just to give you an idea, people talked about that Farrah Fawcett Major's, movie where she had the burning bed. And the reason why the bed was burned was not just to kill her husband, but the memories of what occurred in that bed. All the abuse and everything occurs. Well, if you extrapolate that out and you talk about your home, you can't have fond memories when you see a home and you realize all that, okay? All the bad memories. So you did the right thing by going there. You did the right thing in sharing your future and your role of the new man in your life. But more importantly, once you did it, it's done. You pick up a few of the keepsakes,
Yeah.
you never go back again.
No.
And even though it would have been illegal and then both of you would have been arrested,
Right.
you probably could throw a match on that thing and burn it to the ground and really be easy.
That would be
But now it's
some
gone.
kind of closure.
It's dead,
Yeah.
and you've got to move on from that. Now, the valuable lesson that you've learned here, and this might not be appeared to you until long after I leave the earth, but when you raise your young daughters and things, is you might share those memories in a very, very light sense. Don't do heavy duty, but very lightly cover it, so they know that when they pick their special person in their life, that they are a little bit more selective, and that's the nicest word to come up with.
Right.
But it's good you did that, and it's good that you gave your sensitivity in that you wanted to go back and see it. But it also should bring you closure, because you realize that's no longer your house.
No.
It's a home when you have love and you have cherished memories from it. That's a home. It's a house when you're just doing it, you're going in there to either be safe or keep the rain from hitting you in the head.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So consider that a good step in closure. And put it behind you. Because the life that you can create now, not only within yourself and children, but your new life is built starting today, not yesterday.
Right.
All right? Well, that's a good start for closure. Well, thank you, Julia, for coming aboard and sharing those very personal, not memories, I hate even to use the term memory in that, but the personal experiences you went through. And in dealing with those personal experiences, Juliette, again, thank you for sharing the depth of that. We're going to come back and I'm going to give you perhaps some solutions so that you won't have to go through a lot of the pain that Juliette went through. We'll be right back. We want to thank Juliette again for her coming on the program and sharing some very deep emotions with you. And yes, the emotions are genuine on both Juliette's part and my part, because each of us have had perhaps a tough point of life where you really wonder, is it worth going forward? But it's especially a tribute to a person's character and personality when not only they go through it, but they become stronger because of it. So I hope that you have heard her message, and if you put yourself in that situation, this is the part of the show where we give you some answers, and that's what I'm about to do. When you deal with substance abuse, or you deal with family members, no matter what their hierarchy may be in the family, and by hierarchy I mean whether they're a sister, a brother, a mother, a father, whatever the hierarchy is, these challenges will become apparent to you right away. And it's a natural feeling, whether it's to save money or the feeling that love can conquer all, to try to intervene yourself and try to resolve a situation. But in the situation that Juliette just shared with us now, I think it would require even somebody more powerful and perhaps more knowledgeable than Dr. Phil. It was a very complex role. And I'll tell you what I mean complex role, You had a role there where a father was not doing, quote, the traditional father role. You had a mother who was trying to assume not only the mother role, but to be the provider and play the role of being the father role. You had the influence of the children involved. And boy, I'll tell you, that mother, to me, she was courageous to try to do all those things and not run away. So the solution to this is not to run away. That doesn't resolve anything. And you'll look back years later and say, boy, if I only known this, or if I'd only done that. And you'll be questioning yourself for the rest of your life. There's no need for that. But the first thing you do is that if you have a family issue, whether it be substance abuse, some type of behavior that's inappropriate, whatever the case might be, you seek professional help. And if you can't afford to go out and hire a doctor or go to an agency, there's a lot of public service agencies that are available that will intervene and provide you help. What that family needed when that problem got out of control was a straightforward intervention. And her father should have been told, look, if you want your wife here, you want your daughter here, you want your sons here, or whatever the case might be, you're going to need to do these things. And if you're not going to do those things, you have two choices. You either go into a treatment center, and that would be inpatient care, to where we can teach you the proper behaviors, we can teach you how to hopefully cure your addictions, or we're going to take this family out of here, and you're going to be miserable, and you're going to cause scarring only to yourself. There is no middle road. And what Juliette and her family had to go through was the middle road of trying to, in a sense, solve their own problem. And this was not at a point that she could solve it. So my feelings that I want to share with you today is simply this. You see our closing billboard, you have our phone numbers. If we can be of any help to you, call us. I don't care what time of the hour it is, call us. But seek help. It's not a defeat for you as a family or as a person to admit that you have something you can't handle. You go out and seek the best possible help you can get, and you ask others to help you. For example, it would be like if I had a tumor on my brain. Even though I'm not a medical doctor, do you really think if I was, I'd operate on myself? Of course not. Well, emotional problems, and what we call emotional scarring, they can actually cause you more problems than a tumor, believe it or not. So what I'd like you to retain from this show is that if you're in a situation as a family or as a personal matter that you're trying to deal with, and it's more than you can handle, sit down, collect your thoughts, pick up a phone, and get some help. Don't let the events that are in front of you control the rest of your life. Your trivia question this week is going to be a simple one. You've viewed this program, you've seen how Juliette did her very best to solve it, you've seen her move on to her new and bright life. What would you do if you were Juliette? And whoever gives us the best answer, you can send it to our website or you can send it to my email address. We're going to award you being the winner of the week. And boy, do we have a prize package that you'll enjoy. Now, who knows? You might even be in front of this camera. On behalf of the J. Marie Wellness Centers and, of course, all the fine folks involved in producing the show, we wish you the very best. You take care of yourself, and God bless.